Good morning, good day to you all. Hope you're doing well. It's time, baby. Time to talk about tension. This is an interesting concept for me, as every lifting concept is, because I'm obsessed with this shit. But tension, mechanical tension, the pulling forces that are used to stretch a muscle or a tendon during exercise. It's something you can literally feel for some exercises. For example, stretching, pulling your calf down, your ankle down, your heel down in these calf raises. You are literally building tension in that muscle. And that tension, that applied force over time, once you contract that muscle, that joint, you're engaging that tension. The more tension you can create, the better stimulus. Think about this on your next set, on your next rep. Whatever the exercise is, think about the joint that you're trying to manipulate and the muscles around that joint that you're trying to adapt and stimulate. So for example, we're doing some calf raises, we're thinking about the ankle joint, the muscles that pull the ankle joint, the posterior side, on the back side of the body, we've got the calves, the gastrocnemius. At the end of each rep, I'm stretching it out, I'm pausing for 3 seconds to try and get the tendon elasticity out of the movement and focusing entirely on the muscle, creating tension through a stretch and contracting and bringing it home, bringing back the bacon. Now, mechanical tension is one of the biggest drivers of hypertrophy, of building muscle over time. And therefore, the more you can think about on those individual sets, the quality of the tension that you're creating, rather than just moving through an exercise, bouncing out of a squat, or jumping, like doing your calf raises like this, up and down, up and down, up and down, without any real tension, without any real conscious thought of creating that tension. For example, on this exercise, the slower I go, the more I have a pause, the more I drive that knee forward to create a steeper angle around the knee joint. I'm trying to close in so there's almost 0 degrees on my knee. Of course, that's impossible, but that's where I'm trying to get. In doing so, I'm trying to create as much tension in those levers of the joint, those muscles, those quadriceps, in order to create the maximum amount of stimulus. And I think from the go, when you're thinking about this tension concept, the easiest way to start is these slow, controlled movements with a pause, applying a tempo. But don't count. You can count. It's easy to count. Easiest way to apply this is to count. But if you think more of, all right, am I feeling a stretch in that muscle? It's easier on like a calf raise or an RDL, the straight leg deadlift, which I'm going to do next, to think about it like that. But initially, when you're thinking of the tension concept, think about building tension slowly through controlled movements. And yeah, it's almost like you're doing a stretch, like you're stretching your quadricep, or you're stretching your glutes. Look, I'm thinking hips back, hips back, hips back, hips back, and stretch the hamstrings, full range, a lot of tension. And you start with building that tension slowly. And what I mean by that is moving slowly, and that's going to be more of a muscle-dominant hypertrophy effect. And you're going to build that over time. And there is a way to manipulate tension to create a greater amount of tension, and that is more ballistic movements, more movements that are more short and sharp. So you build that capability, that capacity for tension, moving slowly with intent, within those good ranges. And that's where you build the capacity, the hypertrophy in the musculature. But then when it comes to athletic ability, jumping, sprinting, think about the amount of time that your muscles and your tendons and your joints go through those motions. If you're jumping, everything is very quick. And there is more tension when you're jumping, when you're doing these sprinting exercises on the muscles, on the joints. So once you've built that tension, that slow tension, the next stage is that ballistic tension. You want to think about explosive, so it could be dropping into a squat slowly and bouncing out. There's going to be more tension in your hips and your knees when you do something like that. Or it could be jumping high, trying to jump up onto a box, jumping down from a box even, because your joints will go from zero tension to a huge jump when you've got that contact time with the ground. And that's one way you can think about improving your athletic ability, your recovering from an injury, is from a tension standpoint. So initially, even before we build this slow, hypertrophic, muscle-focused tension, you can think of more static tension. Say you've got really bad knee pain or whatever, you can think of just holding a wall sit, static tension. So you're not moving, but you're just holding those positions for a longer duration, 30 seconds to a minute, and getting those joints, muscles working a bit without any real tough stimulus. And from there you can start building in these slow, controlled movements that you see the majority of my training at the moment looks like. It's very hypertrophy based. I'm doing sprinting outside once or twice a week, but the majority of the work in the gym is slow and controlled at the moment, and that's because the main focus is hypertrophy. Building the musculature around the joints in order to build more strength and more abilities in the future. I'm in that middle ground of building that hypertrophy effect. So think about this. Next time you go in the gym, next time you're doing a set, of the tension that a muscle is going through. And you can literally feel it. You should feel it after a set in particular. The more tension you create and the closer you get to failure on those sets, how many reps, good quality reps you've got left in the tank, the more you'll feel your muscles have been like pulled apart and just like, oh, there's blood in there, they're feeling juicy. And that's great. I think this tension spectrum of static to explosive is a very interesting one to think about, because you can think about the ability of your joints across this spectrum, from being able to do a static wall sit to a high jump, is the ability that your joint has to produce force in a short period of time. So think about starting slow and building up through slow movement until more fast and more joint-based, ligament-based actions. Because your ligaments and tendons can produce more force, take more force. That's what a lot of like parkour athletes, they can jump from super high up, they're skinny guys, and take a jump. They can take a fall from like 5 meters, which is ridiculous. And they can take it into a little squat. And that's because they built their tendon ability over time through doing these crazy movements. So you can think about it like, you're starting off building muscles, and then eventually working on your tendons through that shorter, sharper, explosive movement. And you want the ability throughout. You want to work on the static stuff from time to time. It's really less fatiguing if you play a sport. You can do that in season. And then off season, you can build that hypertrophic ability and then that tendon ability by being more explosive with your movements. And that's a really interesting way to think about it. Think of your tendons as the levers the lever length, like, what did that guy say? Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand and I can move the moon. Or think of that lever as your tendon ability and the place to stand as your muscle ability. And the longer the lever gets, the bigger your muscles get, the better that place to stand is, the more you can move yourself, the more you can take, the more explosive you'll become, and the greater ability of producing, absorbing tension you can achieve. I hope that makes sense. Because there are ways, tendons and ligaments are pliable, they're adaptable, and you can learn and do that through this tension spectrum. Static to explosive. Get after it, try this stuff out, figure it out, focus on learning to control tempo and tension first, not tempo, and then apply that to more explosive movements. I hope you got some value from this. Drop me an email if you're interested in coaching. Have a good day. Lots of love. Let's go.